My name is Juliana Nykolaiszyn with the Oklahoma State University Library. Today is Thursday, December 6, 2007, and I'm at the El Reno Carnegie Public Library in El Reno, Oklahoma, interviewing Marjorie Ball Moesel, Esther Robinson Moorhead, and Mary Myles Rogers. This interview...
Smith Rogers.
Well, that's fine. Mary Myles Smith Rogers. All right. This interview is being conducted as part of O State Stories, an oral history project of the OSU Library. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to begin by going down the line and learning a little bit about you. I'd like you to tell me where you're from originally. We'll start with you, Marjorie.
I was born southwest of Yukon on a farm and grew up on the farm and went to school at Yukon High School and was very active in 4-H, so I was pretty determined all along I was going to go to OSU, Oklahoma A&M at the time.
Okay. And Esther?
And I am from Geary, Oklahoma, and I was born in Geary, Oklahoma, attended school there 12 years. I decided in my 8th grade year of home economics that I would go to Oklahoma State University,
Okay.
formerly A&M.
And Mary?
Well, I was born in Oklahoma City and went to school there, Central High School, and I had a great friend who I was kind of torn whether to go to OU or OSU, but I had a great friend and she wanted a roommate, and I wanted to major in home ec anyway, so we headed to OSU. It was Oklahoma A&M.
So tell me a little bit about your parents, your siblings, if you have siblings, and what your parents did for a living and if they went to college. Esther, let's start with you.
Okay. I had a brother who was 4 years younger than myself, and he attended Oklahoma State University. He was killed as a sophomore, starting his sophomore year. My dad went to OSU 2 years, and then he moved back home and began farming, married my mom, and began farming. They lived there all their life, in the same homestead, until they moved to town in 1976.
Okay. And Marjorie, did your parents attend college or?
No, neither of them attended college. My dad did go to a prep school, Oklahoma A&M prep school, and then went back to farm, but he was born and lived all his life within a 9-mile radius, and my mother married when she was a senior in high school. She was orphaned when she was quite young and lived with various people. She had a sister and 3 brothers, and they were just scattered because it was during time when there wasn't much money around. And so, but she and Dad met. He was about 7 or 8 years older than Mother, and then they farmed until Dad's health got bad enough they retired to Yukon, but it was still within the same radius. They were very smart people, though, even though they didn't go to college.
And what crops did they farm?
Oh, we had a dairy, and we grew a lot of wheat and silage crops, and we had chickens and gardened a lot.
Okay. And Mary?
Well, my dad was born in Cedartown, Georgia, and went to Berry College in Georgia, and came to Oklahoma during the the oil boom time, and met Mother. She was born in Oklahoma City, and he was sold insurance and did do oil things. And at one point, I had a brother who went to OU and was one of the NROTC students in 1953 in that plane crash when there were, I believe, 20 students killed. But he was a sophomore at OU. But Mother and Daddy lived in Oklahoma City most of the time. We lived on a farm at Choctaw for during the war years, and also had a fish hatchery in Cassville, Missouri for a little while. So, till the children began falling in the ponds and Mother and Daddy decided we better move and come back to the city.
I didn't tell about my brothers and sisters, but I had an older brother, older sister, brother just a little older than me, and then a younger sister.
Okay. Now, why did you guys want to attend Oklahoma A&M? Did your parents encourage you? Were you looking for something in particular? Or tell me about why you decided OAMC. Esther?
I think I already mentioned that I knew at the 8th grade level in home ec that I wanted to be. I had 2 excellent home economics teachers in high school. Role models for sure. Bernice Walker is still living in Stillwater, and I frequently see her. And then my aunt and uncle lived 2 blocks from the campus. He was a professor in agriculture. So I had a room already reserved for me. And my aunt and uncle had 4 daughters, so there were others in college at the same time I was. So I had my own advantages of living in a family and yet living in dormitory style too. So,
What was your uncle's name?
Uncle's name was Chris White, and he was agriculture ed professor. My aunt sponsored the Aggie Wives. These were wives of boys who were majoring in agriculture to be ag teachers. And she organized the wives so that they would have some input on what to do when they got out in the world of agriculture.
Wow. So you knew early on, 8th grade, that
Yes.
that was the path for you. Mary, why did you decide to attend Oklahoma A&M?
Well, we had my parents had a wonderful couple, best friends, and she was the home economics teacher at Choctaw High School, and she was just a lovely role model. And when we were trying to think of what would be good, for me to major in, it was easy to settle on home economics, and then OSU was a great place to go.
The place to go.
Yeah.
The
Wow. There we go. And Marjorie?
I don't think I ever considered any other college because I was real active in 4-H and went to 4-H roundup every year. And once I started going there, and it just seemed like the right place to go. And I again had a role model that was very good, Margaret Edsel, later Margaret Edsel Fitch, who was a home demonstration agent here in Canadian County, and she still is an excellent role model. She's a wonderful lady. And so I also majored in home ec ed, planned really to be a home demonstration agent.
Wow. So I have quite an interesting question for you ladies. How did you get from your hometowns to Stillwater? Marjorie?
Well, my brother and I were in the same grade in school, and he also went to Oklahoma A&M, and the first 2 years I think I was there. So we would go back and forth when we went back and forth.
Did he have a car?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then after he quit to go ahead and farm, went with Tony Koba, because we were friends. He was a year ahead. And then sometimes I'd go home on the bus. And then after I was married, well, of course, we went home with my husband. It was another dick.
Okay. And Mary, how did you get to Stillwater?
Well, I didn't even think about driving in high school. No problem at all. Walked to high school, And then when I went to college, my mother and dad, or daddy, just drove me up there. And when it was time to come back for Thanksgiving, he came and got me. When it was time to come back for Christmas, it's really simple. All those 4 years, just, and sometimes the bus, but mostly they just drove up from the city. And it wasn't until I graduated from college and then landed this job and needed to drive all over the state that we got a car right quick. Learned to drive over the weekend.
Yeah.
Were the roads paved between Oklahoma City and Stillwater?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And Esther, how did you get to OAMC?
Well, since I had family there, it was kind of, my parents would come up and get to visit. The two sisters would be together, or I would take the bus home. And I went home a little more often than Mary did. Not that often, but I would go on the bus. And the bus would stop. We lived on the highway, so it would stop at many times and just let me off. We just lived 2 miles from Gary, but the bus driver would stop and let me off.
How long of a bus ride was it from Stillwater to Gary?
2.5 hours probably.
Okay. So let's talk about where you lived on campus. And if you lived several places on campus, please share that with us too. Esther, where did you live on campus?
Well, I lived with my aunt and uncle in the home. And I was just one of the girls. I had chores. I helped do the dishes, do some of the food preparation. I was just a family member.
Was it far from?
About 2 blocks.
So you walked to and from? Nice. Okay. And Marjorie, where did you live?
My first year I lived in Willard, and my roommate was Adele Murray. And we were good friends from 4-H. She lived in another part of the state, but we knew each other well. And my second year, I lived in Murray, and then the third year in Stout. And my second year, Virginia, and I can't think of her maiden name, but she married Gene Allen. And she married just around Thanksgiving. And so then I was without a roommate for just a little while. In the second semester, Sue Stetson from Illinois was my roommate. And that year I was in a corner room, and Sue was from Illinois and liked cold, and she would have the window up at night, and I would we're still good friends. And then my third year at Stout, Martha was my roommate, Martha Sowell. And then I was married in the summer to my junior and senior year, and my husband and I lived in a house that Dr. Ely, who was a professor at OSU in horticulture, where he was going for his finishing up his doctoral work, and so they wanted us to stay in their house and take care of their house and yard and everything. And her mother and father lived just down. They wanted us to take care of them, but actually the Smiths took care of us, but we took care of them. So I was lucky. We just lived about a block or so north of Bennett. Now it's part of the property that's been taken over for the athletic area.
Okay. And Mary?
Well, as a freshman, I lived in Murray, and we, of course, in our room there was 1 lavatory and 2 beds and 2 closets, but the telephone was halfway down the hallway. 2 telephones halfway down the hallway, and you did your laundry in the basement. And then when I pledged Alpha Chi Omega, moved to the Alpha Chi house, and there was just 1 dorm upstairs for 35 girls, all in 1 dorm, and we had to walk 2 or 3 blocks to the washateria to wash your clothes, or just package them up and send them home, and then when they came back there was a package of cookies. So then I lived there 4 years till I graduated.
We've heard some interesting stories about stuff coming back in laundry boxes.
I had the advantage of visiting all these people in the dorms on my way back to my home, 2 blocks away. So I would stop in, and if they weren't home, I'd leave notes on the door. Everybody had a message board on their door.
Yeah.
been by. Sorry I missed you all.
Tell me a little bit about social activities. I know in the sorority houses, a lot of the fraternities had dances, and a lot of the dorms had dances. Let's talk a little bit about that you can remember. Marjorie, what do you remember about social activities?
I did go to some dances, but I didn't go to dances as much as some of the other activities. I really enjoyed our student activity at our church, and it was called DSF, or Disciple Student Fellowship, and it was just off campus, but we had a lot of activities, and then church on Sunday, which we went down to the First Christian Church, which was downtown, and in fact, the minister that was there was one who married Dick and I, and when we were married, and then we would have, a lot of different clubs we were involved in, and the clubs would have activities, and then we had, I don't remember what they call them, but you'd use your student card. Allied Arts. That was good, yeah. They always had some real nice things.
That was thrown in with the tuition. I mean, you
So they
get
had
A or B.
plays or...
And not only that, but the ball games too, you could go to.
Esther, tell me about some social activities that you remember.
Well, I'm kind of like Margie. I didn't participate in a lot of the dances and the social clubs, but I belonged to Wesley Foundation, which was right across the street from Theta Pond. And again, went to church on Sunday downtown at the Methodist Church.
Good.
Became an officer. Before I left, I was the secretary of the student group. And still stay in touch with a few of the Wesley Foundation kids.
Good. Mary?
Well, and I'm a Baptist.
Cynical.
And so I loved going over to the BSU. And Mrs. Henry Bennett was my Sunday school teacher at First Baptist. And in the sorority, they had what they called dance hour once a week. It was, I think, a little longer than an hour, but it went. And then each year, a couple of formals, So there were lots of. It was really active, exciting time.
Do you remember your house mother?
Yes, I certainly do, but I can't tell you her name at the moment.
And was she an enforcer?
Oh yes, and I can remember talking about enforcer. Do you all remember? We heard about this one dean. Maybe I shouldn't mention her name. When we were in the dorm, that the girls couldn't wear red because it attracted the guys, and you could not wear black patent shoes because they might reflect.
Wow.
And,
was this the home economics dean or the dean of women? Okay.
And that changed. So, I mean, then when the new dean came along, the stories weren't quite so unusual.
Wow.
Oh, and also, if the girl sat on a guy's lap, you should use a lap board.
Where would you get the lap board from?
Beats me. They didn't ask that.
Marjorie, do you remember a curfew in the dorm?
Yeah, they had curfews.
Mm-hmm.
And once you were dating, if the fellows had a car, and it seemed like you had to wait till they flat the lights before you go in, even though you were ready to go in earlier. But, and some girls were bad about missing curfew, but I only did it once, and that was because we were waiting for a thing. We both went to sleep and woke up, and there aren't many cars around. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be in so much trouble, because some of the other girls I knew had been in a lot of trouble, but they were very nice. They were very thoughtful. I had 3 house mothers at 3 different dorms, and they were all very good.
Well,
And we had what they call it, was a hall. It was an upperclassman would be a hall person, probably monitor or something. And that person would, but for some reason they didn't get after me at all, so I was glad.
What would happen if you missed curfew? What were some of the punishments?
Mostly just getting after you, I think. But like I said, I was real surprised because I had heard some of them get pretty good talking to.
And Esther, did your aunt and uncle make sure you were in at a certain time, or?
No, I don't recall, and I wasn't dating that much, and that wasn't a problem. I look back now and wonder if they wondered if maybe I should have gotten in a little earlier, but I wasn't really out all that late. And usually tried to let them know that it would be an evening activity or whatever.
Now, where were some? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, then we grew up at a time when everybody was innocent, and we wanted to follow all the rules. It's a different day out there now, but I think that everybody just tried to do what you had to be home at a certain time. There is one funny thing about it, the dorm life, though, that in the fall of '49 or the spring of '50. Do you remember the panty raids?
Mm-hmm.
Do they still do those?
Well, now I've heard it described several different ways, mostly from a male perspective. So you're going to have to give me
that would be very interesting to hear
perspective.
the male perspective, because I didn't actually see it happen, but my college friend, this one I talked to a lot, I just talked to her the other day, and we were up on the second floor of Murray Hall, and it's on Monroe Street, and the side of it is on, I don't remember the name of that street.
Washington?
I'm not sure, but the guys came up on that side of the dorm yelling at the girls, and the girls opened the window and communicating back and forth, and then the girls threw their panties down. Can you believe that? But she saw it happen, and I lived in the middle of the dorm, and I didn't see that happen. But it was weird, I thought.
Yeah, sounds about right. I've heard a few stories so far. But I'm glad you didn't participate. That's good.
No, I can't imagine.
Well, tell me about some of the places you guys like to hang out on campus. Where would you guys like to spend some time? Esther, where would you like to hang out?
Well, I don't know that I hung out that much there, but I did enjoy going to the snack bar on the 4th floor of the Student Union. The Student Union was built in the 51. I think it was between our sophomore and junior year, maybe the end of our sophomore year. And it was just like a soda fountain snack bar. I remember having class at Williams Hall, which was near the fire station, and then a class at 1 o'clock. That would have been at 11 to 12. And then a class at 1 over in Home Ec West. And that was a far jaunt to go home for lunch. I usually went back to Annie and Uncle Chris's house for lunch. So I started going to the snack bar, and I would have a grilled cheese sandwich and a bowl of tomato soup. I can still taste it. And that was a nice place. And then there were several nice sitting rooms in the Student Union where you could meet someone and just visit. Or I used it that way. Or study, yes. Quiet place to study if you didn't want to go to the library. Mm-hmm.
Mary, where are some places on campus you found yourself spending time?
Well, the Student Union, but also that Theta Pond was just such a pretty little place to sit and just absorb the sunshine and sit down between, if you had a few minutes. But I remember it as just being a beautiful place. But that was probably mostly in just working at the sorority house. We had to study in the dining room. I had to meet certain hours of study, and the gold, they showed the freshmen a trophy, and the one who got the best grades could get their name engraved on the trophy. So that was quite an incentive for just kids starting in to try to do good. So I studied and studied and studied, and I made the trophy.
All
Good.
right.
Good.
Do you remember what the trophy was called? Did it have a name?
I don't. It's still there, but I don't remember. It was kind of a tall one, and it kind of was. I don't know whether it was freshman. Next time I go, I'll look.
And Marjorie, where did you spend time on campus?
Well, one of the questions you didn't have on the list was about if you worked.
Yeah.
You know, and my freshman year, I was an elevator operator at Willard. And at that time, they were hand operated. And I enjoyed that because I like people. And you get to know everybody in the dorm, you know, pretty well. And then my sophomore and junior years, I worked in the cafeteria at Murray. Even after I was over in Stout, I went back to Murray and worked. And that was also good. But, you know, just getting together with the girls in the dorm was always fun. And I would go, a lot of people go over and buy a shake or something, but I never felt like I had enough money to do that. But we would go to the student union for different things in the library. And so all of those were good places.
Tell me about how the elevator worked.
Well, you had to try to hit the floor, just try to stop at the right spot. You didn't want to stop too low or too high. You know?
And how would you stop it?
Well, that was the way you stopped it.
It was all by hand?
Mhm.
There was a MASH screen that,
Yeah.
that they would pull across like a gate for keeping kids, you know, separated. What would you call it, Marjorie?
Well, it was keep you from falling out.
Right, yeah, that's what it's for.
Not get in after, so you wouldn't get too many in at
It
one
was
time.
lattice,
Yeah,
kind of a lattice gate, metal.
and later they did have the more automatic ones.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a fun job.
Wow, what an interesting job.
Occasionally, some of us would be asked or we volunteered to serve banquets in the student union, put on our little black uniforms, especially home ec majors, and serve the big banquets. And the big ballroom would be full of people. In my scrapbook, they have the 50th celebration of the home ec. And we all put on our little uniforms, helped serve. You might see someone like Dr. Wilhelm or, you know, Dr. Bennett or somebody.
And they, when we were working in the dorm, sometimes they would have special things that we would, if you didn't have a class right at the time, we could serve on those. Again, you wore a little fancier than
Right.
if you did those.
Black uniform, little white apron. And it was fun.
Interesting. Did you spend much time in the library? What do you remember about the library? It was fairly new.
It was new
You know.
while we were there.
Mary, do you have any memories of the library?
Well, just study so much. I don't know why in my little scrapbook I have a cheat sheet for my chemistry class that for one of the finals the teacher told us we could have just notes on one sheet as long as it was just one sheet, but I've got it packed with and the library was a great place to go. It was quiet, good place to study. When we didn't have to study in the dining room of the sorority house where we were so required to spend so much time.
I can't hardly remember. I know we had a library, but also each department or each college would have their own library. And when it was all moved to one big building, you know, you had to learn a lot about where the material would be that you might be interested in using.
Did any of you take the library course? There was a course to help you learn about using the library.
I can't remember whether I did or not.
Did
That was
you?
good, yeah. I thought that was interesting.
What did they teach you in that course?
All about all the keys to where you could find different things, and I think we truly
The Dewey
liked it.
Decimal
Yeah,
System.
Dewey Decimal System, all of it. Of course, anymore there's so much computer stuff too that it would be a lot different now. But
I remember being at the dedication, standing out on the steps.
and they also had quite a few activities, special events that would be in the just to the south of the library, there was a pretty big opening there, and so sometimes they'd have special things go on there.
In the library?
No,
No,
just outside
outside.
the library.
Kind of a pavilion or whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it. Guess a pavilion has a cover, but anyway, just that.
Okay.
Where the fountain was. And occasionally the fountain would get chemicals in and we'd have a purple fountain or a blue fountain. Do you remember that, Marjorie?
Oh, you crazy students.
Don't talk about being crazy. About the first day of school of my freshman year, I had a class in the HA building, the Household Arts, and I got out the little map, and figured out and here clear across the campus. So I got up a little early to get clear across. And when I got there, it was the AH building, Animal Husbandry. I certainly not to go in that direction anymore.
Well, what were some of the buildings that you took classes in? Did you take all of your classes in the home ec building?
No.
Esther, what were some of the buildings you took classes in? What were those classes?
Well, I did English in Williams Hall, which was over by the fire station. And sometimes I remember having 1 or 2 classes in the Old Central, the older building, maybe history or something, I can't remember for sure. But when the new Home Economics West was built, we just thought we were in heaven. So many lovely furnishings and elevators and library all under one roof. It was very, very special. And it was built in phases, so we graduated before the foods section was finished. Am I right, Marjorie? Don't you think? I think it was finished later.
She mentioned Old Central. I had a history class in Old Central, and I remember so distinctly, I can still see him to this day, Alfalfa Bill Murray coming for an interview.
Oh, no.
And it was like he was the governor 31 to 35, and so this would have been more like 51 or 2 or something. So numerous years later, after he was governor, but he was just not dressed like a governor. You'd think a governor would be
I
dressed.
don't think he was.
And he had ridden the bus up there, and because I actually took the bus back on the same time he came back. But it was so interesting because he didn't really look like a governor, but he had been our governor.
What was he wearing?
Well, just, kind of just some, I hate to be recorded. It wasn't very
Well pressed.
He was dressed down.
dressed down. That's the word.
We'll
Big
be
time.
very politically correct.
Big time dressed down. Did not look politically correct.
Do you remember any other buildings that you had classes in?
Oh, the same ones that Esther was talking about. I don't recall any other one at the moment.
Okay. And Marjorie?
Well, we had Quonset. Didn't some of you have Quonset
Yes.
buildings too? Yeah,
First
so
year.
I mean, we had a number of different buildings. We'd have classes. You'd have to have a pretty good walk sometimes from one to another.
What was it like having a class in a Quonset hut? Do you remember? Was it too
No.
hot, too cold, too loud?
I don't remember it being any different than the other classes, really. I remember one time when we won some kind of game that a lot of students felt like we should have had a day off afterwards, and there were crowds that came by and wanted everybody to walk out of their class, and they called it a walkout or something. I forget what they called it, but anyway, that was I was in one of the Quonsets at that time.
Did the teacher let you out?
I don't remember. I just remember all of them coming, come on.
Well, let's talk more about the home economics building. What kind of appliances do you remember inside of it, or just describe it to me, or some of the classes you took? Mary?
Oh, we had a fantastic interior decorating teacher and class. I started to bring, I still have this big notebook that she had us do of floor plans for all the rooms and where we arrange the furniture, we can move it around, but it's still glued where I finally decided it should be. And fabric samples, that we chose colors from for different parts, different in decorating in a room. But she had us drawing designs. That's I'm still in my scrapbook of a chair, a sort of ornamental chair. I love the interior decorating, and to this day, some of her words still ring in my ears that you start with a color that makes you happy. And so turquoise is my color. And you can see this color.
Your earrings.
And I'm moving to a place soon, and it's going to be turquoise. And the first home when I married I didn't marry in college, but in '56. Then after 3 years later, and we had to. We bought a home, and guess what color the living room wallpaper was? And then I was trying to find an oil painting to go above the sofa, and couldn't find any turquoise sky on any oil painting in Oklahoma City at any store, so I had an oil painting painted with turquoise. But it all goes back to my interior decorating teacher.
And what was her name? Do you remember?
I have it written down by the end of the.
She said Pippin.
Pippin. Okay, I'll be looking in here to just review, but yeah, it probably was Miss Pippin.
Miss Pippin.
Okay. And Marjorie, any notable classes you remember?
I think I might have taken that class, and we were talking about that on our way up. The time that I had a roommate and then didn't have a roommate, and because I thought, it's so good to have a little more space to work, and I could put some stuff out on the bed. It was really a very good course. But all of the home ec teachers I felt like were good. I really enjoyed them all.
What were some of the classes you took?
Well, you took the food and nutrition, and you took clothing, and you took, of course, I was in home ec ed, so we also took some educational courses. And in your junior year, you went out and did observation, and in your senior year, you went and did student teaching, and that was all a lot of fun too.
We had a tailoring class too. That was fun.
Very much so.
And then I think we had one just called orientation, the very first year you took home ec orientation.
Got a taste of all of it.
Yeah,
And child care.
Oh yeah, that was child development.
Esther, any memories?
Well, I remember after getting in the new building that each of the professors had their own office, or they might have shared an office, but it was an open door policy. You just felt free to go in and maybe have to schedule, can I come back Friday afternoon if you wanted to share something, or get a little more help maybe, or just to visit. I was an officer, and I think Marjorie was too, in some of the clubs, and I felt free to go by most any time and visit with the professor that I had in home ec ed.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the practice houses. You guys remember the practice houses? If you could describe the location of the house, what was in it, what you did in the house. Esther, I know we spoke a little bit earlier today about it. Why don't you start us off?
Well, there were two practice houses, one on South Monroe and one on North Monroe. The North Monroe house was a newer home, and I think it only had, I'm going to say 6 people, but the South Monroe house probably had 10 or 12, 10 maybe, 8.
I remember
8,
that. I just went to some classes.
Anyway, it had several more students, and we lived there the whole semester for 12 weeks. I believe it was a rotation of 12 weeks rather than a semester. And we did our own meals, and you were responsible for either preparing or cleaning up or laundry and making out the menus, doing the shopping. It was a practice.
Mary, any memories?
Well, I remember distinctly trying to prepare a recipe and the bread didn't rise. And I was so embarrassed that I went out and buried it right outside the back door. Then I worried that the sunshine might make it come up. Or that it might
rise
it
then.
might finally rise. But that's probably one of my biggest memories of the house, but it was a great experience.
How were you created in the practice house?
Well,
Or were the
yeah.
instructors, did they check in on you? Did they?
well, they lived there too.
Oh, wow.
In both cases, I think they were both single women, and they lived there. So they were there kind of watching out of the corner of their eye when you were doing your lab work. I'd call it kind of lab work.
Marjorie, were you in the practice house at all?
No, because I was married my senior year, and that's when I would have been in the practice house. So they just had me make notes and do a notebook of all the things that you do. So I was practicing on the job.
Let's talk a little bit about student teaching. You guys did a little student teaching your senior year. I'd like to know what that experience was like. Esther, what was that like for you?
Fabulous.
And where did you do that?
I did it in Guthrie with Martha Sewell, Norman Sewell, Martha Norman Sewell
Yeah, we
in
did.
Little Rock, Arkansas. She was a transfer student into Oklahoma A&M, and we buddied up and were selected to go to Guthrie. And Mrs. Camilla Starzer Erickson now was our instructor and excellent home economics teacher. And we were there for 4 weeks. But she was the state president of the vocational home economics and got to go to a national convention. And left Martha and I in charge for a week. So we were under our own supervision for a week. But it was an excellent experience. Just really great. And the year before that, we had another girl and I had gone to Elk City, and that was for just a week of observation, and it was an excellent experience. When you did your observing, you were really just in the classroom watching the teacher and how she worked with the students and keeping notes, a notebook that would not end.
Mary, do you remember anything?
Haven't yes. We had Della Conrad. Remember her?
Oh, yes.
Della Conrad and I drove to Vian, Oklahoma. And we stayed with the principal and his wife, who was the home ec teacher. We stayed in their home. So it was really a great experience. She was really helpful and good and let us, I still have the notebook of notes I did with little cartoons along to illustrate the experiences we had. I didn't bring it though. But it was a really good, I remember us driving at night clear across to Vian, but we didn't have any problems. So she did the driving since I didn't drive.
And Marjorie?
I did observation at Garber, Oklahoma. And that was a real nice experience, except I think it was about the second from the last day we were there. 3 of the boys had skipped school and gone hunting, and they had their guns behind the seat, and they hit a bump and the guns went off, and I think 2 of them were killed. The gun the bullet ricocheted, and bullets ricocheted. And so that was a very traumatic thing, because it was a small school, compared to some schools, and everyone, they were all very well liked young men, and it was really hard. And that reminded me of something that happened when I was in high school. My next door neighbor on the farm was killed in an accident. He and another boy were killed by a drunken driver when they just got home from a football game, and they were crossing the street to go to get in their vehicle and were hit with this drunken driver. And so I remembered how that felt. It was not, it was terrible. And so that was a very traumatic experience. And then, you all remember Miss Merrifield?
Yes.
Well, when I did student teaching, we lived in her mother's house. And that was a real good. And she was also, I think they kind of work it where they're gone a few days anyway while you're doing your student teaching. And so
But
that
you
was,
get to feel.
yeah. But I really enjoyed that. My husband didn't enjoy it too much though, because he'd say, I don't want you being gone so much, because we were still fairly newly married then. So.
Tell me about your favorite instructor or most influential instructor in the home ec department. Mary, do you have one?
Well, it would have to be the interior decorating with the turquoise. I would say she probably made more points with me than any of them.
Mm-hmm. Esther?
I guess it would be Laura Cole, who, isn't it Laura? Was my home economics advisor and just got me started on the right track.
And Marjorie?
I really liked all of our home ec teachers, and I liked the foods and nutrition area real well. But one that probably made more impression on me was Mrs. Ware. And I had known her husband for a long time because he was the poultry extension specialist, so I'd known him all through my 4-H work. But she was a good teacher, and this was my senior year, and one of the things was going to be a field trip to Tulsa to visit some of the stores and all. And my sister-in-law and brother-in-law had come to visit. And so I got permission for her to go with us. And they were at a motel and they didn't get there in time. And so I missed the trip. And I felt so bad because I really looked forward to that trip. And I felt like I had a loss there, But for some reason I didn't ask her, well, how can I make up for it? And at the end of the semester I got an I in the course. I thought, oh my, what happened? And she said, oh, you should have done some other things to make up for that, but she never said anything about it, and I don't know why I didn't think to ask, but so I made it up, and I got an A out of the course, but I thought, that was smart to impress on you that you need. But I just felt like, I really missed out on a great opportunity, so I felt like I was a loser already, and then when I got an I was so surprised.
Do you have any other home ec related stories you guys would like to share with us?
Home ec club and Omicron Nu and all of those were fun too.
Tell me about the home ec club.
Well, how often do we meet? You don't remember?
Monthly.
That's what I was thinking about once a week.
We had an overall home ec club for all the departments, and then each department had a club, and we met about monthly.
And what types of things did you do in the home ec club?
Well, we did speakers.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think we had speakers and then just some time to get together, have fun.
Fun things. In September, usually we had a picnic catered by Clay Potts Barbecue. And I remember my senior year, I had to estimate how many would show up at that picnic. And we'd had sign-in sheets and so on. And Miss Cole and I finally came up with a number. And right on the nose.
Oh,
that
is
on
great.
the nose. 110 or whatever it was, showed up for that picnic.
I hear he was quite
Oh,
an
he was.
impressive figure, and lots of people would come out. How many people were there approximately? Do you remember?
For that picnic?
Yeah, for that picnic.
Oh, 100
Wow.
for that picnic. And that was just the home ec people that had been invited for that picnic. But he did barbecues all over the state and all over the campus.
I can always remember him because I would help serve at some of the things that he did, and he'd always say, now, our fingers were made before spoons and forks, and the corn on the cob you pick up and eat like this. And the chicken, you don't cut into it, you pick it up and eat it. I mean, he was really fun.
Yeah.
One, you were asking about social things. That one other big thing at OSU when we were there was the basketball team in Henrietta,
Yeah.
and the stadium was so packed with kids, and we went clear up to the top of the stadium, and yelled and screamed until we were hoarse in class the next day. But it was so exciting to me. Here's one: Aggies rated #1 team. And it was, and a sympathy card from my boyfriend from OU.
Did you attend wrestling too, or just more basketball?
It was a big, basketball was so popular then.
Do you remember some of the players?
I wasn't into players somehow.
Just the game.
Henrietta.
Henrietta was the
Coach Iva.
coach.
That
This
was
probably has some of the players' names in it, but
I attended most all the home football games too, and some baseball. Of course, my family was pretty sports-minded.
Were there a lot of people at the football games?
Yeah, we had pretty good turnout. They had a student section, and students sat in one area together.
Had the flashcards.
Yeah, that was fun too.
I didn't participate in that, but I remember attending some of the games. I have an article in the Nykolaiszyn the day that Dr. Bennett was buried, he and his wife.
Yeah.
And
I want to talk about that too, so go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's
Well, I was going to say, he was very well known, not just in Oklahoma, but all over the world. And I was involved in the Hort Club too, and the people, all the horticulture students were out of class for 2 or 3 days making flower arrangements, plus all the florists all over the state. And did you go to the funeral? That was the biggest funeral certainly I've ever been to.
Gallagher was full and overflowing.
Yes. And they had flowers from the floor up to where everybody sat and hanging all over. It was a beautiful service. And then after him, I'll let her tell more about Dr. Dennis, but after him we had Oliver Willem. And that man had a terrific memory. He could recognize almost every student and call a lot by name. Most of them, he would be able to say your name when he saw you on campus. So that was quite a feat, I would say.
Well, I think you felt like after we heard about their accident, he was an older man, a father figure. We didn't know him personally, but we felt like we did.
But see,
He lived right on the
his wife
campus.
was a teacher in Sunday
Yes,
school.
right. And so it was pretty traumatic. You wondered who, how could they possibly find anyone to take his place?
Sure. He was so influential.
Yes.
Mary, what do you recall from Dr. Bennett?
Well, and seeing him in church service and with his wife, I guess that's the most memorable part of it.
Did you go to the service?
Oh, yes.
What was the feeling, the mood on campus?
Oh, you knew something had happened. It was just solemn. Indeed.
Well, let's
I need to switch the tape pretty
Oh,
soon.
okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about homecoming when you're students. OSU is known for having one of the, best homecomings in America. What was it like back then? Did you have parades? Did you have house decorations? Just tell me a little bit about that. Let's begin with Mary.
Well, we really did get involved in decorating the house and floats and spending hours and hours punching little pieces of tissue in that chicken wire. And there were beautiful floats and beautiful parades to ride on a float, and that was kind of fun in a way. But they were enormous events.
Was the float you rode on the sorority float? Or?
It was a fraternity float that time. This note I have in my scrapbook is from the Teaks, so they were the ones that invited 3 of us to ride on it.
Well, that's great. Marjorie, what do you remember?
Well, I remember certainly the parades. Everybody enjoyed seeing that, and that was all the floats and everything. And then going by and see everybody's house decorations, and they'd start 2 weeks or so when it would be about to take to get it all done. Because some of them, particularly the fraternities and sororities, really did a magnificent job of decorating. But the dorms did some too. You know, they had decorations. And as I said, I was also in the hort club, the horticulture club, and we did one all of flowers and leaves. It was all like the Rose Bowl parade, that float. And that was a lot of work too, putting things through. Again, it was, you make your float whatever shapes you want to make it, and then punching all of those through and working late at night a lot of times because you still had your classes to go to, and so you do that later.
And Esther?
Well, since I wasn't involved in either one of those, I just got to enjoy the parade mainly. But I do know that it was lots and lots of work, and we just prayed that it didn't rain and melt that tissue paper.
I want to tell one other story about a homecoming. This was, I believe, the year that I was a senior, most likely. And my husband had a Model A car, which we rode in, and we went to see the parade. And all of a sudden, we stopped at one of the corners or something, and it wouldn't go forward. It would only go in reverse. And then trying to decide, do you go in reverse on the wrong side of the road or the right side of the road to try to get out of the traffic? Because there's always a lot of people coming. That was kind of real hilarious, a little scary.
And families always tried to come at that time to visit.
Oh, wow. That's good. Did you, have you guys attended many homecomings after graduation? Have you tried to return for a few?
A few.
Mm-hmm.
A few, not as many as I'd like to
Yeah,
have.
same way. I think only 2.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember when you were a student during homecoming, the football game? Was it a big deal like it is now?
No, I think probably more people attended.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
For
because a lot of
homecoming.
families would come and stuff.
Right.
Really big.
And this traffic, was something
Yeah,
else. We think, and you think traffic bad now, why it was bad then too, on homecoming weekend for sure.
Where would they all park?
Well, wherever they could, someone's driveway, and hoped they weren't blocking them in.
Do you remember any campus traditions? Things students did? You're shaking your head, Marjorie. Do you remember
One thing
anything?
is you talk about Theta Pond, and I agree. Theta Pond was really nice. But they also had a tradition of when somebody got pinned or engaged, they would throw the fella at Theta Pond. And that was one tradition. That was,
Any others?
I really don't remember any, other than just, like Mary said, it was a good place to visit, walk through. I was going to mention that if they hadn't made a sidewalk or a path, and enough students made one, why they would gravel it then after the library and the student union were put together. That's why we have so many unusual sidewalks going in all directions out from the Theta Pond.
Do you remember any tug of wars happening in Theta Pond between the different classes?
I don't know about different classes, but I think maybe like some of the fraternities would do against each other. I don't know that I ever actually
I was never
witnessed
involved
one.
in one, so I
I
don't
can't
recall
remember.
really.
Seems like I've heard about that, but I don't remember ever witnessing it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell me a little bit about the music of the day. Did you guys listen to any music while you were in school back then? What types of artists do you remember? Mary, do you remember?
Well, I was afraid you were going to ask me because I was really not into music like kids are now. I dearly love gospel music,
Sure.
but I really did not have a collection of. I practiced the piano when I was a little girl, taking piano lessons, but I really was not into bands at all, and I didn't spend time, listening to them on the radio or anything, like a lot of kids do and did probably then. But maybe you all can tell it.
Well, the big band, the big band sound was definitely in. I still enjoy Tony Bennett and Bob Hope. And I think it was Bob Hope that came, and we went to the Gallagher Hall and listened to him. I'm pretty sure it was Bob Hope. Could have been one other artist, but it was a big deal.
Yeah, those allied arts
Yes.
situations were good. And now, what do they have, the orange peel or something?
Sure.
But I mean, that would be kind of the same thing, but you had something really special. And I remember one year I took choir or something or other. But I enjoyed going to when the choir sang their
Yes.
things.
I think we
And
all
I
had
would-
to take Glee Club.
Yeah. But I wasn't that good a singer, so.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy singing with a lot of people who were good singers.
Yes.
And, but I'm like you, I didn't seem like we had that much time,
We
really.
had time to.
I mean, you're studying, and then I was working, and I don't remember listening to any
But I'm
special
sure
thing, other
on-
than going to just the special concerts and things, is mostly what we do.
But I'm sure that on weekends there were those who
Yeah.
went
I'm
to
sure
the
there were.
union. There were places in the union that would have small dance areas and jukebox or whatever. I don't think too much of it was long.
Did you spend any time outside of campus? Were there hangouts that you guys visited? Do you remember? Or was it your whole...
Eskimo Joe's was not there. The campus corners was.
Yeah,
Yeah, Campus Corner, but
what was the name of him? I wrote it down, I think. McCaffrey's. Some went to McCaffrey's drugstore, and then Campus Corner. And then, like we said, each one of us had our youth groups from
Sure.
church. Our church youth groups were off campus, but not too far off.
And they showed movies too, didn't they, in certain areas of the union? Maybe not every weekend, but
Well, and
frequently.
there was a movie theater pretty close
yeah,
there
there was
in the
one
corner.
theater
Yeah,
The Leachman?
Yes.
we got to go to once in a while.
yeah.
And you guys walked to the movie theater
yeah.
or walked to downtown?
We didn't go downtown too much.
No, never downtown.
This is
No.
off this subject. Go ahead.
I did, because I would go occasionally, with my aunt, or I knew where they shopped downtown. Cat's department store was a big.
I would tell some. My husband was from New York originally, and he came in his Model A from New York, and he had already been to a college after the war and had gone a year or so, but he wanted to go into horticulture, so he wrote all the colleges west of the Mississippi because he decided he wanted to be where it was friendly and all. Oklahoma A&M was the first one to write back, and then he sent his transcript and all was accepted. And so being prompt made a difference to him, that he came here. But when he came, it was on a weekend, and so he couldn't get to the place where you enroll and all, and so he went to one of the little cafes downtown, and everybody was, hi, howdy, how are you doing, stuff like that. He thought, there must be somebody that looks just like me. He really thought that they were mistaking him for somebody else because they were all so friendly. And so I think that made a very good first impression on him. His very first impression of Oklahoma was when he was coming back on the troop train after he had been in China in the service, and they stopped for refueling or something in Reno. And a farmer with a truckload of watermelons came up and told the officer of the day that they could all get off and have as much watermelon as they wanted, and he was very impressed by that. So that was one reason he sent to Oklahoma.
They're very, I'm not from Oklahoma. Everybody is just really friendly here. I just moved here about 6 months ago, so I'm impressed myself.
Well, welcome to Oklahoma.
Yes.
Where are you from?
I'm from Florida.
Oh,
Wow.
We would have thought you were a native and knew 99% of what we're telling you.
Did you guys do a lot of dating with the boys? They ask you on dates?
I thought I had. a boyfriend that was going to OU from high school.
Uh-huh.
And I really kind of thought we weren't dating that closely or that much, but I kind of thought when we both got our degrees that might be what happened. Well, that didn't happen. So I don't know that I held back any, but I might have. So I wasn't dating that
You
much.
weren't dating?
that much. No.
Well, basically, I want to know what a typical date was like back then.
Well, it could be just to the library to study. It could be up to the corner to have a soda or into a movie. Now, Mary,
or
go
to,
ahead.
or to a movie.
Mhm.
Right, they were just real simple. Go out and didn't go to dinner.
Uh-huh.
No, I
No.
Heavens, no.
Mhm.
Just go for a walk or go to the movie.
study
And
together.
that was it. When I was in high school, I kind of went steady with a boy that went to OU, but he ended up going to West Point, and I really was a little, kind of thought he was real interesting and nice, but so I didn't. I dated on campus, but I didn't really fall madly in love with anybody on campus. But after college, then I met this young guy. And we married 3 years after I graduated.
So, Marjorie, you just studied?
Well, I did date, of course, before I got married, but I didn't date much my freshman, sophomore year. It's probably mostly my junior year.
Uh-huh.
And
You would study together?
and he was in the horticulture department, and so, we did activities together. Not only did they do things like the float every year, but they also made apple cider and sold as a money-making project, and we'd go out to the place where the cider press was, and it'd be a bunch of us go out to do that, but
It was more group dating.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Wesley Foundation, go over and be with everybody.
Yeah, it wasn't,
Walk. Maybe
It's not
someone would walk
specific.
you home and maybe someone wouldn't.
or maybe the whole group.
Mhm.
I was part of the only girl in the hort club, and so a lot of times there maybe be 8 or 10 of them walk me home. So that was fun.
How did you get involved in the horticulture club?
I had been president of the National Junior Horticulture Association, and so Fred LeCrone, who was later vice dean of students, but he was a horticulture professor, and I had known him as an extension horticulturist when I was in 4-H, invited me to speak to the hort club banquet, they had a hort show every year where people from all over the state would bring things in and display, and they would do things and it was a pretty big deal. And so they invited me to speak at the banquet, which I did, and Dick was there. I didn't really know him that night, but later on in the hort club, and that's how we got going.
Now, later on, after you've graduated, a couple years after you graduated, Oklahoma A&M's name changed to Oklahoma State University. Did you feel that was a good change or bad change, or you wanted it to stay the same? Or
They did a good selling job.
I thought it was fine, just at Oklahoma State University. It wasn't quite so agricultural and mechanical only.
Mhm.
So Oklahoma State University was a good name.
I thought so too. It was just the shock. We just weren't quite ready for a change, but it was the thing to do, yes.
I think they pretty much impressed that university is better than college, because then there are colleges within the university, but that the university is considered higher ranking kind of. And so I think, like I say, I think they did a pretty good selling job. I don't think many of us really were anti.
No.
now, the name of your school changed from home economics to human environmental sciences. How did you feel about that change?
Well, again, that was keeping up with the times. Other universities across the nation were progressing in that direction, and it was time for Oklahoma to follow suit, I think. And we've always had outstanding leadership in the home economics field at OSU, from Dean Talbot when we were there. And she was the beginning. She was the beginning dean, and clear on through to our search for a new one. As far as I know, we don't have a full-time one right now, but
We have a new president.
yes. But it was good.
Good.
We just always had good leadership.
But we may still call it the other.
Oh, yes, and we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, we know.
We still refer to it as home ec.
Yes.
And then, see, that's kind of like the home demonstration clubs, and then home extension clubs, and then they've changed several more times. Well, it's still the same group.
Yeah, it is.
And when, after we graduated, there was Home Economists in Business, HEIB, H-E-I-B, and then there was Home Economists in Homemaking, H-E-I-H,
And an extension.
and then the extension. So you can't get those letters all straight. The name hadn't changed.
Yes.
Now, I don't want you ladies to be modest, but when you were students at Oklahoma A&M, did you win any awards at any of the activities you participated in? And you'll just have to tell me if you did. Anybody?
All of us did.
You all? Well, then, let's begin with Mary then. Tell me about it, Mary. I'll put you on the spot first.
I did make Who's Who, and I wrote down a few things because I'd forgotten I was involved in a couple of these things. It said I was a Delta Kappa Gamma Scholarship winner 4 years. I was in Orange Quill and Orange and Black Quill. I was one of 10 outstanding home ec freshmen. I was home ec consumer education class president. Anyway, it goes on. Omicron Nu, and I was a Great Issues Council secretary and the member of the Young Democrats and Future Teachers of America. I was Aggie Vader Girl of the Month once.
Oh, wow.
My picture's on something here. But I was very honored to have done that.
I can't even think of the name, but I was thinking you also got the one where they put the letter on your door or something at the end.
There are a few more things written down here that I didn't mention. But anyway, I was very honored. I did try to study.
Oh, that's good. Esther, tell me about your honors.
Well, I tried to study, but I wasn't as scholarly as either one of these gals. I made good grades, but I wasn't as scholarly. I wasn't in Omicron Nu and Orange and Black Quill, but I was active in the home economics organizations and was an officer each year, and ended up being the president my senior year.
Nice.
And I felt that was quite an honor. I think it took me down the road to a successful professional career in home economics. 32 years.
She taught home ec 32 years.
Wow.
When we got out of college, they formed a home ec alumni organization, and I was asked to be the first president.
I was just getting ready to
My
say that.
husband was an attorney, and so I think, that was a way to get the bylaws all set up.
Free me.
I didn't really say that.
But probably true.
And then Esther is,
I'm a past president
she's
also.
a past president. And
I helped get this gang together, plus some others, for our 50th. Worked real diligently locating people.
Oh my
Of
God.
course, the college helped a lot, but some people don't always stay in touch with the college, and so we had to do some research. Now, Marjorie, you had quite a career too at school.
Well, part of the way I paid for my schooling was I won several scholarships in 4-H, and I remember one occasion I was taking, I can't remember the lady's name who taught this chemistry class, but it was one of our requirements, and
I'll think of it in a
she
minute.
was a tall, kind of large woman. She was a good teacher, and that year I missed 1 year to go to National 4-H Club Congress, and 1 year to go to, by that time it must have been National Junior Vegetable Growers Association, and you missed a week each for those things. And at the end of the semester, she told me, she said, well, I'm sorry, you just you lacked 1/10 of 1 point of making an A. And I thought, well, I was happy with a B till I knew I was that close. And,
Dr. Gerber,
yeah.
or Miss Gerber rather.
Yeah. Anyway, so I did win some awards. I don't remember what all they were in. I was in several organizations too. But at the end, each year, at that time, I think it was the Home Demonstration Club, State Home Demonstration Clubs gave a scholarship or some kind of award to the senior home ec graduate who had been very active in home ec, I guess. And maybe, I don't remember, we might have had to have been a former 4-H member. I can't remember that. But anyway, I was honored to give that. Some of the other things. One other, this wasn't anything to do with home ec, but did any of you have anything to do with Religious Emphasis Week on campus?
No, just probably can't put my finger on anything, but we did.
I was involved in the planning and all on that, and my senior year they asked if I would be chairman, and I really wanted to be in a lot of ways, but then I thought, I'm going to be doing student teaching. I'm married and wanted to take over house, so I just helped again that year. But it was fun getting to meet a lot of the speakers. They'd have speakers, quite a few speakers come, and
Out of state speakers.
yeah,
A lot.
or some of them out of country
Yes,
speakers.
that's true.
I got to introduce Kagawa, and I always thought that was quite an
Yeah.
honor, to do that. But it was really interesting to do that and to work with that too.
Oklahoma State is, from an outsider looking in, has a very unique group of alumni and students. Everybody feels this great pride of being a student or an alumni. Tell me a little bit about what you think sparks such loyalty in alumni and students. Esther, let's begin with you.
Goodness. Well, I think it comes from the faculty. I think they have always had an excellent faculty, and I think that carries over to the students. And they're dedicated. I think they're helpful to students and just initiate pride. And that just goes out, ripple effect all over the country and comes back then when needed. And that's why we have an outstanding alumni association. That might be one reason.
Marjorie?
Well, that was one of the things I had thought of, good, caring teachers.
Yes.
They were good instructors, and they cared. They really did care about the students. They would help you in lots of ways. Only had one professor I really didn't like, and he was a sociology teacher, and he was embarrassed us all so much that was the one class I attended where the boys would sit on one side and the girls on the other. I mean, I thought he was too far ahead of me for sure. And I mean, that was not one I enjoyed, but most all my other classes I really did enjoy. And I think it was the teachers, and then you make a lot of good friends, and there's a lot of great memories. So all of that kind of goes into it.
And it's such a gorgeous campus. And it was a real wholesome experience. And I'm very grateful for having made that choice to go, because I do attribute a lot to the professors, and especially the School of Home Economics.
Yeah.
Shouldn't call it Home Economics.
That's what it was when we
I attribute a lot of that. And it's helped our lives to this day, the things we learned.
Being active in the economics club, we had an opportunity in our upper class years to visit other colleges for a conference in the spring. We'd get on a bus. Those who could would go, and you would get to visit other campuses. And we always came back. Ours was so pretty, sticking with the Georgian architecture. So many of the other campuses have this style and this style and this style, but ours is more uniform. Not always, but more uniform. And I think that adds to the goodness and the good feeling.
Well, I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Has anyone mentioned Dr. the doc, no, that took the pictures.
Oh, yeah, he had a great memory too. And what
Oh,
class did he take? I took a class under him.
Yes, photography.
I didn't take photography, but I know who you're talking
Well,
about.
I just thought, I had it just a minute ago.
Your first class. He would take a picture of
Yes.
everybody.
Yes, and he made all the dances, all the sorority houses, all the fraternity proms, and take pictures. And you'd have them on Monday morning. I mean, he worked all weekend getting those out, he and his staff.
Was there a dark room in the photography class, or?
Oh, yes, and then,
But I don't think I took photography, but I
I
took
didn't.
some course that he taught but he was well known for that. And by the time the next class met, he would be able to, by looking at their pictures, be able to say who they were.
We've had one person say his name. I have to go back
well,
and
I may think of it.
and it, did he have a top hat?
Yes, he wore a top hat, always. And it starts
Not
with a
in
P.
class, I don't
No, no.
think. Turkey sounds right, but I think that's after
And
somebody named.
I think back, I just had a little box camera, but I took pictures and developed and learned a little bit about the process. But
And to this day, she's still doing it.
I have a little better camera, but not too much.
Well, I'd like for each of you to tell me what graduation day was like, if you can remember. I know this is a question that was not on the list.
The family all came usually, and that was something pretty big.
And did you graduate in Gallagher?
Yes, in the field house.
And I really took some summer classes at OCU and at UCO. And so I graduated a semester early. So I had that middle of the semester graduation, so it wasn't quite, it was a different time, but it was a nice, I remember it, but it wasn't probably the big deal like
The
at
big
the end of the
Tigers.
spring.
And did they have it in the field house? And did your parents come up?
Yes, they sure did.
Yeah, most everybody's parents tried to come. And this was a big deal.
Well, it was.
Esther, do you remember anything about graduation day?
Not any more than much. Like I said, it was I don't want to say scary, challenging moment. We made it, and tears of joy, and then tears of anticipation walked down the road. I was fortunate enough to know where I was going. In 3 months, I would be standing in front of a classroom of kids, girls, and felt very fortunate in that. A lot of students were still looking for jobs.
Well, I'd like you to tell me, each of you, tell me a little bit about your families, what you ended up doing after you left OAMC for your careers, and just give me kind of a catch me up between then and now. Okay?
Okay.
Let's start with you, Marjorie.
Okay. Well, I was married 1 year before we got out of college. Before I got out of college, my husband graduated before we married, and he worked at Stillwater Floral. And then after I graduated, probably by the next fall after that, we went to Enid, and our first son was born while we lived in Enid. And then he went back for graduate studies at Ohio State and got his master's and taught some there. And then he taught at Rutgers University in New Jersey. And then he was from New York, but he really liked Oklahoma. So he was anxious to come back. And so we ended up coming back to Oklahoma and worked in Pauls Valley for Ball and Florist, and then went into business for ourselves later. And he died 4 years ago, but this is our 50th year in business. I still have a business.
Oh,
Mosel's Fort Haven's what it's called, but anyway. And we have 4 living children. Rod, their oldest son, and he went to OSU. He did not graduate. He went into business before he graduated. And then next is Eva, and she married after high school. And she does a lot of writing for religious magazines and whatnot. And then we have our next son is Bruce, and he got his degree in business at OSU. And then Douglas, our youngest son, got both his bachelor's and master's at OSU. And that was in the area of horticulture. But then he got his doctorate at Texas A&M, and he's teaching at University of Missouri. And then our youngest baby was born. He died pretty soon after he was born. So we have a good family. We have one granddaughter who went to OSU at Oklahoma City in nursing. And her name's Chrissy Lincoln.
Oh, wow. You have
That's our daughter's daughter.
lots of orange in your blood.
Yeah.
Not red blood, but orange blood.
Okay.
So we have, a lot of people who are OSU fans.
All right, Esther, tell me what happened. Catch me up.
Catch you up. Well, as I said, I had a job waiting for me, and it was in Clinton, Oklahoma. And Dr. Harris had hired me. He was working on his doctorate at OSU. Interviewed me in the student union, and he said, "Now don't call me, I'll call you." But I kind of knew, maybe, hopefully. So I got the call that we would be there, and it was a 2-teacher department, and the other girl that was a beginning teacher also from OCW, Chickasha. And her professor had told her, "One of you will have to be head of the department." Well, 2 beginning teachers, who's going to be the head? We didn't need a head, we just needed to work together, and we did. After the first month, we each had an apartment, and we decided that was silly. We were spending all of our time together comparing notes and planning lessons, so we moved in together that first year, and then she married at the end of that year. And I stayed another year and met my husband and was married the next summer. And we moved down to Purcell, and he started working on a doctorate, which didn't work out for him, but I taught. Then we moved several small towns and ended up in Tulsa for my last 25 years of teaching at Berry Hill High School, and thoroughly enjoyed it. We had no children. I had 12 nieces and nephews, and after 40 years, we made a full circle and returned home to Gary, where I grew up, and that's where I live now, in the home my parents built after they retired from the farm.
Nice. All right. And Mary?
Well, I graduated in January, and then I was a home international harvester, had one home economist in each state. So I was the home economist in Oklahoma and went around showing people how to freeze food, of all things.
Wow.
Package it for the freezers that just come on the market. And anyway, at my job, this young man was applying for a job, and I knew we had met before, and I walked down. I decided I'd leave at the same time he was leaving, and we walked down an elevator to go to where we worked, but we walked down together, and then he asked me out at the bottom of the stairs, and. He was in law school, and we dated 3 years, and he practically every night had a date. The doctor finally told me I had chronic fatigue, and
Better get married.
And anyway, he was a member of the Oklahoma legislature. He'd been elected to the House of Representatives and then the Senate for like 20 years. And we married in 56, and in 57 he was chosen Oklahoma City's Outstanding Young Man, which was really, I thought, a great honor. Mm-hmm. And he was a wonderful Christian gentleman, and we had 3 children, Rosemary, Rand, and Rod. And Rosemary went to OU, and I was an Alpha Chi I was vice president, but she was president of Alpha Chi at OU, and now she's an attorney, and went to law school in OU Law School. And Rand, our middle son, went to OU, but he was killed in an accident about 6 years ago now. And Rod loved to do experiments with little white mice when he was in junior high school over at the OU Medical Center. So, and I drove him back and forth to take care of his little mice. But he went to Dartmouth and then to OU Medical School, and he's a urologist in California now. This morning doing robotic surgery, he called on the cell phone on the way over here today. And but they're great children, and we lived in Oklahoma City the whole time, and my husband died 11 years ago. And I did work for the state as a social work supervisor for the Department of Human Services for 20 years. I taught home ec, but only a short time until our first child till Rosemary was on the way. So it's been a great life.
Good. Is there anything else you ladies would like to add that we have not spoken about today? Any stories you want to share? Any influential people you want to mention from your time back at Oklahoma A&M? Anything that I've left out and totally forgot to ask, and something you think is important for us to know?
Well, there was a big hailstorm our
I was
freshman
going to
year.
mention that.
And I was in the dorm. I think it was a Sunday. Yeah, it was a Sunday. And
It was April the 1st,
yeah, the third floor. And all of a sudden saw this black stuff coming with the roof. We were losing the roofs.
It was slate.
I mean, it was a huge hailstorm. And then I wanted to go to DSF that night or to church that night. And so I took a cab because you didn't want to walk in all that hail. And I remember that a lot. And all the horticulture had glass, the horticulture greenhouses were glass roofs. And it just not only broke the glass, but then the glass broke all the plants inside. And my husband lived in the hort shed. He wasn't my husband at the time, but I mean, that was part of his job, was watching over the greenhouse. But all the horticulture students had to work cleaning up for several days, and it was a terrible thing. There was a lot of expense repairing all the buildings. That was a big hail. It's the biggest hail I've ever been in.
You remember the date, Mary?
April 1st, 1950.
Wow, that must have really stuck with you for you to remember the
It
date.
was a big.
It was a big
I mean,
hail
the roof of Murray Hall, the dorm, the slate was.
coming off.
Well, I'm sure we had damage probably on where I was staying, but I don't remember the hailstorm precise.
Wow.
I mean, it didn't.
It was a lot of hail.
Huh, that's interesting. Well, anything else you'd like to share? Feel free to jump in there.
The only other little thing I didn't mention, Margie was trying to tell me what I got a little honor that was under the door. Is that Phi Kappa Phi?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to remember. That was a very high honor.
That was a great honor. But it was a great life and great happy memories.
And I would encourage everyone to participate to their fullest when they go to college. Don't be all academic oriented, because it takes all of it to be a well-rounded, successful individual.
Sure.
All of these activities that we were involved in made us who we are.
And I do think those students mean to study too.
Well, yes.
And some of them don't do. Some of them do all the other and none of the study. So I think that is important. All of it. I agree that being involved in several things is fun. And I just think we were lucky to have so many good teachers.
We were there at the right time.
And I know they still have a lot of good teachers.
Any other advice for students, Mary? Current students?
Just try to live a well-rounded life and not get involved in a lot of this stuff that young people seem to be trying out now. Just know that it's it's not the thing to do, and live upstanding lives and find a church home that they is just like a home from away from home.
Well, we do appreciate you guys taking some time out of your day to meet with us, to share your stories with us. We do appreciate it very much.
Well, we appreciate the time you all are taking
Yes.
to learn what it was like back in the old days. That you're even interested.
We're very interested.
We really do appreciate it, Juliana.
And you know, I think you were talking about at your place, they're doing some history like this. And my mother was very interested in history, and she did quite a bit of this interviewing people. And at the Yukon Library, they have some of that and still show that sometimes. So I think it is really good. And I just think it's fine that people are interested in what went before, because if we learn a little bit from what happened ahead of time, we're better off. And we had some good history teachers too, even though those were big classes.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.